people don't feel they matter. And when people don't feel they matter, you get this poverty of dignity. Leaders weren't taught to care for people. They were taught and rewarded to use people. So it's just a totally different mindset. When you invite somebody in there, you can look them in the eye and say, you are safe in my care.
That's Bob Chapman. He's the chairman of Barry-Wehmiller and the pioneer of truly human leadership. Under Bob's leadership, Barry-Wehmiller successfully navigated the 2008 recession without resorting to layoffs while growing its revenue from $20 million to $3.5 billion. Bob shares this story and more in the latest edition of his book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. So you'll learn 1, the case for caring as a business strategy, 2, the one skill to transform your relationships, and 3, how to dramatically boost team morale with one simple practice. And if you want a quick summary write-up of the actionable wisdom that Bob shares, you can sign up for the free Golden Nugget email newsletter found at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Bob. Bob, welcome.
It's good to be here. Good to have this exchange.
Well, I am excited for this truly human exchange we're about to have and to hear about your truly human leadership. What on earth is that?
It captures kind of the transformation we've been going through for the last 20 years. It's kind of contrary to my education and my experience in the business world, which was about using people to achieve results. Truly human leadership flips the lens through which we see those people we have the privilege of leading to seeing them as somebody's precious child and treating them with respect and dignity, which is truly human leadership. Understanding the impact we make on people's life, their health, and the way they go home and treat their families. So truly human leadership is a totally different way of looking at the people you have the privilege of leading.
Well, that sounds good and wholesome and the way it quote unquote should be in terms of the human experience. Tell me, what is the alternative? What is the norm?
Well, and I look back on my business education. I took management classes, got a management degree, and got a job in management. So I thought my job was to manage people, to achieve results. And if we needed to lay them off, fire them, it's just business, And so I saw people in my education and my experience, they were functions for my success. I was a nice guy. We had a nice company. But the way you see people impacts the way you treat people. And so our education system doesn't prepare us to care for people. It prepares us to use people to achieve results. And people don't get promoted for caring for people. They get promoted for achieving results. So it's a totally different way of looking at leadership as a profound responsibility to the people you have the privilege to have in your span of care.
Well, no, that's interesting. You mentioned layoffs is one place where the rubber meets the road. So in your world, layoffs don't happen, or what circumstances would they happen?
Well, I think the best way to look at it is, again, we're taught it's about achieving financial results. And as you know, I think in 2025, layoffs are at all-time high. Only 2020 had so many layoffs. So you're seeing major corporations using layoffs, announcing layoffs to send a message to the shareholders that they're going to make more money. And we use people to achieve that signal. Because why would a company announce they're going to lay off 10,000 people? Why would they announce that when we know psychologically the damage done to the people who get laid off is horrible. And we know the impact on the people that don't get laid off that are still there. They don't feel safe because they could be next. So again, we never discussed layoff in my education and my experience. It was just things we do. And so the transformation was when we saw people not as functions for my success, but we saw them as somebody's precious child, a revelation I had. You can't lay off your kids. And so I would say to you that, having been in business and leadership for 50 years, half of my career was pretty much, that's just things you do. It's not pleasant. You don't really want to do that, but it's the way you make numbers work and the market rewards you. So layoffs or hang over most people's heads. They don't feel safe. How can I decide to raise a family, buy a home, get married? If one day they're going to walk in and say, you know what? to improve our earnings, we're going to have to let you go. I know we recruited you, but right now we're going to have to let you go. So a lot of people in our country feel a lack of dignity because they don't feel safe. They feel they're being used. I think Tom Friedman said it beautifully to your audience, and they'll like this. He said, more than a poverty of money, we have a poverty of dignity. And when people feel used, not cared for, they feel a sense of humiliation. And when you feel a sense of humiliation, you'll see anger and unrest like you've never seen before. So what are we seeing right now? We're seeing anger and unrest that confuses us. Why? We have a very prosperous economy, but we don't know how to care for each other. And that is the foundation of truly human leadership. And layoffs are just one of those tools that we are taught in business school and rewarded for by the public to achieve financial results. And that's sad.
Yes. Well, let's talk about perhaps that tension there. I think that there may be a subset of folks who say, well, Bob, I mean, that sounds really nice and pleasant and enjoyable. And I'd like to work in such a place. But in reality, we have a duty to maximize the shareholder value. And accordingly, costs need to be kept at their minimum relative to the revenue that is so attached to them, et cetera, et cetera. So when folks push back, what's your response?
Yeah, well, then I'd say to you, if you want to optimize your profitability, which is our responsibility, because the business model, it's interesting. And I think I want to get this message across to your audience. When Harvard wrote the case study on our company about 10 years ago, they invited me up to be in the class. And then the professor asked something I never thought of. He said, is Barry-Wehmiller's success its business model or its culture? And they voted. 75% voted our culture was the key to our success. And then Jan Rifkin, the professor, looked at me and said, Bob, do you want to comment? And I got up and I said, I understand why you think our culture is the foundation of our success. But let me tell you how I would answer it. The foundation of our stewardship of our people is the business model. It's not about getting the right people on the bus. It's about building a safe bus, which is your business model. And then having drivers who are your leaders who know where they're going and how to drive that bus safely. Then anybody that gets on this bus is going to be safe. So it is the responsibility of leaders to design a business model and to keep that business model efficient and to not use this brutal tactic of layoffs and right sizing, downsizing, and justifying that we failed to do that. We failed to keep this company efficient, and we had to hurt people to achieve the efficiency. You know, I was on a panel with a CEO of a major bank, very impressive gentleman. And he said they went from, in I think this case, from 300,000 people to 200,000 people without a layoff by using natural attrition. When somebody retires, they brainstorm how they can redesign the work to not have to replace that person. And if you do that every day, which is a matter of, I don't want to gain weight, so I don't have to lose weight. So it is a way of viewing your responsibility. If you think your responsibility is only to the shareholders and you don't care about the people that you impact, that's sad. Okay. Your responsibility is to all the people who put their trust in you, shareholders and all other stakeholders. But again, it's not just about being nice. It's making sure you have a good business model and that a business model stays efficient, not has to be hammered once in a while with 20, 30,000 layoffs. Layoffs are a tool that the market likes and he rewards you because you're going to be more profitable. That's sad. We are absolutely destroying our country for economic gain and not human gain. So we've got the most prosperous economy in our history and have the highest level of depression, anxiety, and suicide we've ever had. Why? Because people don't feel they matter. They're just tools for somebody else's success.
Mm-hmm. Well, so can you perhaps unpack for us what an efficient business model that has no need to ever do layoffs looks like as compared to a more typical business model that has layoffs just in part of the cycle?
Well, I think the story most people tell about Barry-Wehmiller, it's in our book, and a lot of people talk about it, it's 0809, which hit all of us. And we had developed what we call the guiding principle of leadership, kind of the constitution of our culture. These are things that define and guide us in our culture. And I was flying around the world talking to our team members about this. And the more you talked about it, the more it was implanted in my heart and soul. And 0809 hits. I walk in to our board meeting in January of 09 And my board looks at me and said, Bob, don't you need to lay off people? And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, everybody's laying off people, Bob. I said, no, I think with our backlog, we're going to be okay. About a month later, I was in Italy visiting our operations in Italy. I get an email from the United States. Our largest customer, major customer, put on hold a major order we had that was giving us significant work. It's one thing not to get a new order. It's another thing for the orders you've got to disappear. And I sat in my hotel room. Prior to us having these guiding principles of leadership, I would have done what everybody else did. I would have said, well, we need to let people go. We need to let 20, 30% of our people go because we don't have work for them. But because I talked about we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people, which is our guiding, our North Star, I sat there in my room and said, what would a caring family do if a member of the family was in stress? We would all take a little pain so that family member would not have to take that pain. That stimulated an idea I had never heard of before, never considered. And it was, what if everybody took a month without pay whenever they wanted so they could be with their family, their friends, time of year? We'll give you a month without pay and we'll get through this without letting anybody go. I emailed back to the United States, flew back to the United States a few days later. They were ready to implement it. The reaction of our team members was unbelievably positive. They were more than willing to take a month without pay. A, they got the time with their family, but B, they felt they were helping their fellow team members keep their job. This cloud over their head was disappeared because all of a sudden they felt safe. We even had people volunteer to take somebody else's time off because they knew the other person wasn't in as good a financial position they were. It was unbelievable, the environment we created. And it was only because we had this North Star that said we measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. And after that, we learned what's called business excellence staffing model. As much as you want to design your products to be efficient, cost effective, you need to design your organization to be cost effective. And that's a powerful tool. And so we constantly are monitoring when somebody retires or moves away or, whatever reason somebody leaves, that natural attrition. We brainstorm. Is there a way to redesign that work, not to dump it on somebody else, but to redesign it, to eliminate it? So it's a constant process of being efficient. So there's no need to let people go because you didn't gain any weight. You are trim and fit to fight. So again, that's what a major financial institution did that I was incredibly impressed with. We learned about it through a lean event up in Canada, but it is profound. So it's a failure of leadership when we lay people off, but the market rewards us and the boards see the share price go up. So it's a hard struggle because they weren't taught to care. They were taught to use people.
Well, that is a very beautiful story. And I love, one, you asked a novel question as opposed to, hey, Gus, or lost an order. I guess we got to shrink the staff. Bada bing, bada boom. Wait, stop, pause, think, ask a fresh question. If in a family, what would we do? Okay. And that gives rise to a novel solution. And boy, I can sure imagine that, yeah, when you are thinking about that decision-making and your own autonomy is preserved, I could think, okay, do I want to take a month off and which month? And okay, and maybe multiples, got it. That feels a lot better. And in a way, a win-win. I mean, you don't have the money, but it's like, okay, I'm helping my colleagues out and I'm getting to be with family or do a cool thing with this time. And I could really see how that can dramatically improve the connectedness among teammates. So that's very cool, Bob. Lay it on me. What are some additional principles and practices specifically that folks in all kinds of organizations can implement?
Well, seriously, again, I had never heard of this practice until our team came up with it. But every organization should look at, are the people I invite into organization with the expectation of being with our company, are they safe? Is our business model designed such that there is a job for them and they can trust us? That is a foundational responsibility when we invite people into our company. And so we work extremely hard to stay financially absolutely rock solid, which we are. Okay. And I'll just add, our share price has gone up 12% a year compounded for 25 years. Okay. And so you'd say, well, gee, we outperformed some of the legendary investors in this country. because we are good stewards of our business model. So business needs to be more human. And again, we originally called it people-centric leadership focused on the people we had the privilege of leading. But Simon Sinek came along and said, no, Bob, this is truly human leadership. This is the way we are called to treat others. Again, when you see the issues we face in our country and the people who, 65% of all people would give up a salary if they could fire their boss. We have TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Get the hell out of this place and have a beer and kill the pain. I imagine a day, as you will understand, where we have TGIM. Thank goodness it's Monday. Get away from the kids, the spouse, and be with a group of people who I really enjoy being with. Okay. That is my goal, TGIM. And again, this is not an American issue. This is a global issue. People don't feel they matter. And when people don't feel they matter, you get this poverty of dignity. And I'm sure your audience will understand that because leaders weren't taught to care for people. They were taught and rewarded to use people. So it's just a totally different mindset. It takes extra responsibility to make sure your business model, when you invite somebody in there, you can look them in the eye and say, you are safe in my care.
Okay, beautiful. I also learned that one of the top things you teach throughout the organization in order to have the great, powerful culture is empathetic listening. Can you speak to this?
Yes. Through these series of revelations, I had 3 revelations that converted me from management to leadership. And we realized that we had been blessed with a vision of the way that would heal the brokenness in the world. And a young man about 20 years ago said to me, Bob, what is your greatest fear? Now, I'm an eternal optimist, so I had to think a minute. And I said, my greatest fear is we were blessed with a message that could heal the world and it would die with me. So we got up the next morning after that dinner and said, okay, what do great religions do to survive over centuries? They articulate their beliefs and they have disciples that carry those beliefs forward. So I said, we need to create some disciples. We can't send them back to universities because universities don't teach people to care. They teach people to use people and reward them. And so we decided we had to create our own university. I mean, this was just a breakfast conversation. And the good news is we had a whiteboard, no preconceived notion. And so when we decided, well, how are we going to create disciples? This incredibly talented team came up with 3 things. And the foundation, the one you mentioned, a gentleman named David Vandermolen said, we're going to teach empathetic listening, which is the greatest of all human skills. Okay. To listen without judgment. When you listen without judgment, you don't listen to debate. You listen to validate the worth of others. I thought when you cared for somebody, you went over and talked to them. It turns out when you listen to somebody instead of talk to them, it profoundly changes the person you care about. So it's the opposite of everything I was taught and learned. So that is the foundation of truly human leaders. That plus recognition and celebration. We spend a lot of time teaching people how to let them know they matter in thoughtful, appropriate, timely ways all over the world. And then a culture of service. Bill Urey uses the word, we need to move from a me-centric world to a we-centric world where people genuinely care about others, not just themselves. So those 3 classes.
All right. So we got the 3 lessons. So, all right, so within these 3 revelations, empathetic listening for validation, recognition and celebration, and culture of service, could you give us the rapid fire, quick do's and don'ts within each? Just a couple powerful bullets.
In empathetic listening, the rapid fire is don't listen to the words because 80% of all communication is nonverbal. When you listen, don't listen to the words, listen to what the people are really saying. That is the key, to look behind the words, with the combination of their face and how they express it. Because a lot of times people will tell you what they think they mean, but there's much deeper. And that's one of the skills we learn.
Could you give us an example for what that looks, sounds, and feels like in practice?
I'll give you a personal example that I think makes it really simple. When our son was young and about to move in his own bedroom, I walked into the house after work and my wife Cynthia said, I want to show you this wallpaper I picked out for Cal's room. So we walk up to the bedroom where he's going to stay and she holds this wallpaper up and said, what do you think? Trying to be a good husband, trying to be very thoughtful. And how do you misinterpret what do you think about this wallpaper? You can't really misinterpret what do you think? So being very thoughtful, I said, it's really an interesting wallpaper, but don't you think it would look better in the family room? Because I couldn't imagine it being in my son's room. She took the wallpaper and threw it to me and said, if you're so smart, you pick out the wallpaper. And what I realized is what Cynthia asked me, she didn't even know it. What Cynthia asked me is, as your wife, am I capable to pick out wallpaper for our son? And what did I tell her? No. So she didn't even know what she was asking me. And I see this all the time. There's a lot of deeper meaning when people are asking them when we superficially think. So taking some time to listen and think and flex to the personality type of the person are keys. Again, we've taught this to 20,000 people around the world. And the most common statement is it changed my life just to learn to listen without judgment.
That's really intriguing because, yeah, there's words, but in that example, I think it points to a common reality, which is there are deep seated emotions, values, stakes that feel rather personal in many, many things that we're talking about all the time.
And I will tell you, it is the most powerful thing we have ever learned in our 22 years journey. Because when we look at the world we have today, we teach people how to speak, articulate your beliefs. We teach people how to debate. I'm right and you're wrong. But guess what? We don't teach people. We don't teach people how to listen without judgment. So again, the key to me was I'm astounded 22 years later, we have taught over 20,000 people around the world to listen without judgment. And what is equally amazing to me is that we did this in a business context. We're trying to convert managers into leaders, people who manipulate people, who care for people. And 95% of the feedback when we began teaching these classes was how it affected their marriage and their relationship with their children. It never occurred to me that the way I would run Barry-Wehmiller would affect your marriage and your relationship with the children. So one of the expressions of our book is the way we lead impacts the way people live. So this message of truly human leadership, given all the issues we're facing in this country right now, is the way we could heal all of the brokenness we're feeling in our families, in our communities, between our countries, because we would learn to listen without judgment, to learn to listen to understand, as opposed to I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, so let's hear it. So this empathetic listening for validation, we're listening without judgment, and that's super transformational. Can you share with us some tips on how that's done?
Well, what we do is we do a DISC profile, which is basically an X-ray of your personality. Okay. And then we start the class with everybody kind of looking at their DISC profile, and we found you uniquely different. I knew that in life that people are born with different hair color, different eye color, different skin color, but it never occurred to me you were born with a different personality. And that personality, you didn't choose it any more than you chose your eye color, creates a lens through which you experience the world. Okay. A lens through which you process data. That is why two perfectly fine people can see the same exact facts and see them entirely differently. But we don't teach people to understand how you see it. We teach people to say, the way I saw it is right.
Right. Now, within the listening class, could you share a transformational takeaway or exercise or thing that they do that is so valuable?
Well, I think it starts with that, what I said to you earlier. When you do the DISC profile and you look at it and you say, is this me? And we say, why don't you go home and ask your spouse? And they come back the next day and say, oh my God, this is me. So I think the biggest revelation is when you see an X-ray of your personality and you had no idea that you had these traits. And we call it style flexing. You can't deal with everybody the same. The golden rule is treat others as you'd like to be treated. What we realize is you need to treat others as they need to be treated, not you need to be treated, because you are uniquely different. I thought could have a positive attitude, a negative. But when you do the DISC profile and you see the personality of people and they then understand why they behave the way they do because of their personality. It is revealing. I mean, it gets emotional. So that is probably the most revealing aspect of, and also effective confrontation. It's called bend the knee. How do you tell somebody what they could do to help you deal with them in a better way? It's called effective confrontation.
All right. Well, now could you share with us some best practices for great recognition and celebration?
That's a great question because what we found is in business, the expression is I got 10 things right and I never heard a word. I got one thing wrong and I got my ass chewed out. And so what we developed was this cadence of looking for the goodness in other people, holding it up and saying thank you in thoughtful, meaningful, timely ways. And it is profound because people said, I had no idea that you thought that of me. It's not about, okay, your 5-year anniversary, top salesperson. It's about looking for the goodness in others and in thoughtful, timely ways, holding that up for everybody and saying thank you. And it becomes part of your DNA to constantly be looking for the goodness in people, not the brokenness in people, the goodness in people. So that is the key to recognition and celebration.
And when you see it, how do you celebrate it?
It's called FBI, Feelings, Behaviors, and Impact. We pause and we let somebody, an individual, know that they have been very significant to your life. And if you just watch the body language, I mean, people say it's the most meaningful event I've ever had because I never knew people thought this of me. It meant so much to me. So, I mean, it's a skill. Again, it's not about 5 years anniversary with the company. It's not about top sales. It's about being a good person and people wanting to say to you, you know, you're a good person. Let me tell you why. And you stand there in front of a group of people gathered, and it just creates this cadence of goodness, this cadence of always looking for the goodness in people. Because, you know, we leave this world and we're inundated through the media with the brokenness of the world. And so when we send people home, constantly being involved in recognition events where we pause and say, thank you for who you are. It's meant a lot to me. It is, I mean, it just gets part of your DNA and it makes a huge impact on the organization. Again, not some big badge once a year. The cadence of this is spontaneous and it's called shine the light. Shine the light in the organization, look for the goodness and hold it up and say, thank you.
Well, I like that structure in terms of the feelings. Like I feel this way because of your behaviors and it just made this impact. And then it is quite potent, I imagine, to be on the receiving end of that. It's like, oh, this guy is totally authentically sincere about this. And these are facts. At the same time, I did do those things and I didn't know it made that big of an impact. Wow, that's really cool. That just sounds like a fantastic thing to hear. Well, now let's hear about your revelation about culture of service. Any best practices or do's, don'ts you'd like to share there?
Yeah, that really came from probably 20 years ago. It occurred to me that we work with our customers to try to convince them to buy our product. You know, we take them to dinner, we give them the information they need. And finally the customer says, okay, we're going to buy your product. And we say, that's great. And we move on to try and get the next customer to buy it. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, what if we actually treated our customer better after they made the decision to buy it rather than to get them to? So I challenged this young lady, a very talented young lady. How can we treat people better after they make the decision rather than to get them to make the decision? And she ended up probably spending 6 months studying the idea of service. And she ended up with an expression, seizing the opportunity to serve others, seizing the opportunity to serve others, moving from it's all about me to it's all about I care for others. And I'll give you a trite example from my specific experience. Cynthia and I were playing golf and we were on a particular hole and on the green. And I said, Cynthia, don't forget your iron that you left on the side as we walked off the tee. And thinking of culture of service, seizing the opportunity to serve others, instead of telling her, don't forget to pick up that iron, I went over and picked it up and handed it to her. And to me, these organizations could be the source of healing in the world if we didn't just use people to achieve our goals, but we actually became stewards and we actually gave these people the skills to care for others as we achieve these goals. So again, all I can say to you, 22 plus years into this, nobody has ever debated what I just shared with you. People feel it is the key to the world the way it was intended to be. And it could heal this poverty of dignity we have in the world, where we have economic prosperity, but we don't have human prosperity.
Big thanks to Bob for sharing his wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Monarch. I don't enjoy thinking about or fiddling with money, so I love resources that make this quicker and easier. Set yourself up for financial success this year. Monarch is a gorgeous personal finance tool that makes your money life easier. It brings your whole money picture from budgets to accounts and transactions and investments into one super handy dashboard on your phone or laptop. I was such a fan of the old Mint.com and was super bummed when it disappeared. But the good news is that Monarch was founded by a team that includes the original product manager of Mint, and I dare say it's even better. I like the graphical summaries that help me drill down into things quickly and easily and helps me get to the bottom of anything that just seems off or weird or helps me zero in on great opportunities for savings faster. In fact, Monarch helped the average user save over $200 per month after joining. So set yourself up for financial success in 2026 with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes proactive money management simple all year long. Use code AWESOME at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code AWESOME. One sponsor to check out is Vanguard. As we step into a new year, it's the perfect time for all the advisors listening to think about how to set up your clients for success. One way to do that is to level up your fixed income strategy. But bonds are tricky. The market is huge, rates shift, and risks hide in plain sight. That's why having a partner with scale and expertise matters. Vanguard brings both. Vanguard bonds provide top-grade products across the board. Their lineup includes over 80 bond funds actively managed by a 200-person global squad of sector specialists, analysts, and traders. Vanguard's been in the game for a long time at a scale that gives them a serious edge. They're able to invest across many sectors, maturities, and geographies, spotting opportunities that others might miss. Vanguard takes a steady approach, focusing on reliability and consistency. So if you're looking to give your clients consistent results year in and year out, go see the record for yourself at vanguard.com/audio. That's vanguard.com/audio. All investing is subject to risk. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. One sponsor to check out is Shopify. When you're starting something new, what ifs abound. What if I fail? What if nobody cares? What if nobody buys my stuff? Shopify can help make things easy. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Magic Spoon and Allbirds to brands just getting started. Shopify facilitates everything from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to use a dozen different software tools. Everything's all in one place, making your life easier and your operations smoother. And what if you get stuck? Well, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. It's time to turn those what-ifs into ka-ching with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/awesome. Go to shopify.com/awesome. That's shopify.com/awesome. Ka-ching. Oh, lovely. Well, now could you share with us a favorite book?
My favorite book was a book called The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. And it made leadership seem so simple about caring for people. And it's probably 30 years ago I read it.
And could you share a favorite habit?
Pause and think. Too much to me of people's lives is reacting to how they impact as opposed to creating their future. And one of the things I would leave your listeners with is, in the context of these questions, is write your eulogy. What do you want people to say about your life someday when that comes, that you're going to leave this world 100 years from now? But think about, what do you want people to say about your life, and then go make it true. Live life with kind of a North Star about who you want to be. Because I find that most people, 95% of people, simply react to what happens as opposed to putting it in some context of where you're going. Because if you don't know where you're going, how do you know what to deal with things? So writing your eulogy is a critical aspect to me of living life with intention and purpose. so that someday when your day comes, you look back and said, I did my best and used my skills fully in service of others.
And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where would you point them?
Well, we have the Chapman and Co. Leadership Institute, where we are sharing with companies around the country about how to embrace this. We have the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and we have Barry-Wehmiller Outreach. So there's a massive amount of information on the internet about this journey. And obviously the book is a story of my journey from management to leadership and then how to do it. And then the latest edition came out with what is the impact? And again, the way we lead impacts the way people live. And we can begin to heal this brokenness we're all feeling if we embrace our profound impact we have on other people's lives, moving from a me-centric world to a we-centric world where we care for others.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you.
Thank you for your interest in the message. And my hope is that your listeners will wake up tomorrow with a better hope for the future, that we can heal this brokenness in the world if we learn to care for each other.
I really dig Bob's simple formula when you're recognizing someone to really help make it hit home and convey just how much that thing they did or said meant to you. The FBI formula: the feelings, how they make you feel, the behavior, what did they do that triggered that, and then the impact, the consequences positively that followed from that. Very handy, easy to apply, and easy to forget a little component and miss out on a lot of the oomph. Great stuff from Bob. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1148. Hope to catch you next time. In peace.
Working across teams is tough, but Asana helps you handle it. Asana AI can spot roadblocks and assign work to keep everything on track. That's how work gets handled. Visit us at asana.com.